Dialing your sound is probably the most important thing you could do as a musician when learning how to record. In this video, we're going to learn all about signal chain, and we're going to learn how we can dial in our own sound to translate in our recordings for what we do. So let's get into it. So before we go into what my signal chain setup is, let's talk real quick on what signal chain is. And for those of you who already know what it is, go ahead and proceed to the next part. But briefly, signal chain is basically this. It is the stops along the way your signal takes from your microphone, so your instrument to your microphone to your music software. And some are more complicated than others, some are more involved than others. So real quick, let's look at this quick diagram. Let's look at an easy setup. So an easy setup would be, your instrument, in my case, my trumpet, to my microphone. My microphone connects via mic cable to my audio interface. My audio interface connects directly to my computer, which is my music software. That's basically a clean, direct setup, and that's what most engineers prefer. If you're recording tracks for someone else, they want kind of a simple thing. They want a clean canvas to work with. But if you're working on your own music and you want to dial in your own sound and you're going to mix your own stuff, let's look at another setup. This setup right here, you can add compression, you can add EQ, you can add saturation, you can add tonality to your sound on the way in. So this setup right here, you would have your instrument, in my case my trumpet, to my microphone. My microphone goes out XLR, which is my cable, to my mic pre, which a lot of mic pre's have. They have EQ, they have compression, and some don't. They're just for coloration of the sound. So it goes into my mic pre, which I use for coloration of the sound. Then it goes out via balanced cable. So you take the line out of your mic pre and go into your compressor. And then you can compress your sound, dial that in, and then go balanced out to your audio interface using a balanced TRS cable to your audio interface and then to your computer. So that's a more involved setup. So, that's always an option. The last one, this is my setup. So my setup is this. I go from my trumpet to my microphone. I go to my mic pre just for coloration of sound. And that's only for a few things. And you'll get to see why I use that mic pre for certain situations. And then I go to my audio interface. And in my audio interface, I can put in plugins that will record in real time. So if I wanted some EQ, if I wanted some compression, even if I wanted some delay or reverb, I could do that. And then from there, I go into my computer. So let's go into what my jazz setup would be, and then you get to hear what it sounds like with and without processing. So this is what I do on the tail end of my signal chain. Do you have to have this? No, you do not. And like I said, and I'm going to say this many times in this video, most engineers prefer just a clean sound. I do this mostly for my own stuff and actually for engineers that like what I do. So if you're recording tracks for someone else, the engineer would appreciate if you just give them a clean sound, meaning mic into interface into computer. And I've heard this from many engineers that they've had to spend hours working on the help that they get from each and every home studio owner, meaning, they just want a clean canvas to work with. So with that, just keep that in mind. But if you're doing your own stuff and you're making your own recordings or with your own recordings with your colleagues and stuff, and they like what you do, then this might be helpful. Okay, let me show you my jazz setup. Okay, this is the end of my jazz chain. And this is, like I said, this is just what I do to shape my sound. So the first thing I do is I make sure that I'm going in through a line input, not a mic input. You don't want to preamp your preamp. Remember, I told you that. So my microphone going through my warm audio mic pre is connected to this first line input in my interface. Then from there, I go to this Avalon plugin. Those of you who used an Avalon know these things sound great. They're nice and warm. They're pretty transparent. And so what I'll do is I'll just do a little bit of tweaking. I'll roll off around 80 to 100. I'll compress 2 to 1, and I'll adjust my compressions levels judging by what I have to do, and we'll see that in a second. With a medium attack, pretty slow release. And then, what I'll do is I'll boost it like 200 just a little bit to give my sound a little more body. And then remember I told you that 2K, 1K to 2K range where the trumpet sounds nicely like this. I get rid of that, a little bit of that. And then I give myself a little sheen. And then, so I have the compression and some EQ here. Now what I do to kind of just like stack the deck, so to speak, is I will use this Pultec, and this thing sounds great. So I'll boost a little bit at around 100 and attenuate a little bit, and then I'll boost bandwidth. I kind of want it in the middle, and then I'll boost a little bit at, like I said, 5-6K. I'll boost just a little bit. I don't do much. And then I'll attenuate. So anyway, these are things that help shape my jazz sound. Do you need to go out and buy a universal audio interface and get UAD console? No, you don't. You could shape your sound in Pro Tools and Logic, Ableton, whatever you're using. But for me, I like to shape my sound before I go into mixing. That way it's less work for me. Now, we're going to go ahead and disable these plugins, and we're going to go into Pro Tools, and we're going to see what it sounds like without and with. Okay, that was what it sounded like without any plugins. Let's engage these plugins and let's turn them on, and let's listen to the sound with the extra processing. Okay, now for my lead setup, it's the same thing, same principle, but again, I'm going from my EV microphone to my warm audio mic pre for coloration and tone. And then I go into my audio interface via line input. Remember, you don't preamp your preamp. And now, what do you use, Joe, for your lead stuff? So me, I'm fairly simple. Like I like to keep, especially if I'm playing up in the upper register, I like to have it not sound tinny. I like to have kind of a sheen type sound to it with some body. So what I use at the tail end of my signal chain is I use this SSL console plugin. And again, it's just like the Avalon. You do the roll off, which I roll off about 100. And then I like to do this pre-dynamic, meaning before the compressor comes in. For compression, I like to have it react pretty quickly, because when you're playing in the upper register, but I like for it to have a natural sound. And we'll go ahead and hear what that sounds like in a little bit. With the compression, I have to adjust the levels as pertaining to what I'm doing. So you go to the EQ right here. Now, EQ, I do a little something different. I give myself some sheen at 10K. Again, a little bit of that hunky noise, meaning that nasally sound. I kick a little bit of that down, and then I go to about 200 hertz, and just with a slight bump, again, half a bump to give my sound more body. Okay, now that's basically what I do, but here's my secret weapon. I go an extra step, and one of the things that I learned when I was learning how to mix and how to use a console, brass sound great on tape. And I know a lot of engineers that put tape saturation when they record brass. If you hear The Incredibles, there were oh, I don't know what I did that for. Sorry. When you listen to the air, that whole thing was tracked on tape. So what I like to do here is I'll go here and I'll use a slight little preset, and it's a preset that, because when I go, it's the jazz preset here. When you're playing in the upper register, you turn the noise off, of course, because you don't want that tape hiss. You want something clean. And then what I do is put the input down and the output out. And what it does is when I go up there, it really rolls off and makes it nice even when I'm up there on, high E's or D's or what have you. Let's take a listen what it sounds like in Pro Tools without the processing. We'll come back and we'll put the processing in it. Okay, let's do it with the processing, and let's see what that sounds like. And that's my jazz lead pop rock setup. So let's go on to the orchestral setup. Okay, so let's go into my orchestral setup. Like I said before, I like to really go in clean, so I'm not going to go in through the warm audio mic pre, which I probably could, but I just like a really clean sound going in. So I'm going to choose my first section here, which I'm going to plug into my microphone into my first input of my interface. And then what I like to do is I like a nice, warm, round type sound. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I always, for me, not always, but most times than not, I will always compress on the way in, and my go-to compressor is the Fairchild, and so especially for orchestral. So, and again, I just go for coloration, not really for the compression that it offers, but it's really soft and gentle. So that's what I will use. I usually go 5 here, so I'll put that on there. And then if I really want more warmth, if I'm doing a solo project, if it's just me, if they want me to play in a section, or if I'm sending these tracks to be part of a section, I'll just go with the Fairchild. But if it's me and my own solo stuff, I'll add 2 more plugins. And usually I'll go with the Neve. I'll go with the Neve. Here, the 1073, and adjust my mic. What I do is, since it's classical, I like to really beef up my mid range. So I'll just give me a little boost there. Again, cut off all the bottom end. Give me a little bit of sheen, not much. And then again, at that one, at that 1.2, that I kind of nix that out. I don't like that nasally sound. If that's not working for me, I'll do one more. I'll do the the Pultec again, which I use for jazz. So let me go ahead and get that real quick. So I'll get the Pultec, and then I'll do a boost at like 100, and I'll attenuate a little bit. The bandwidth, I'll go halfway on that, and then again, I don't do any of the sheen there. I mean, this really offers a nice dark tone. I use it for flugelhorn sometimes. And then again, my secret weapon, I'll share it with you again, the Studer or the tape saturation, and I'll use just a basic. Okay, well, thank you. I'll use a basic setting, and it's their orchestral setting. So let's go to their classical, and again, I like to get rid of the noise, so there's no noise on here. Great. And then I'll just do you know, a little bit. I'll cut the input down. So, and yeah, that's my orchestral setup. And let's listen to everything with and without those plugins, and we'll go one by one. So let's take a listen. Okay, let's do it with the processing, and let's see what that sounds like. So those are my signal chains when it comes to various different types of music I do. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to comment in the comment section. And again, if I helped anyone even that much, please like and subscribe. We'll see you in the next video.